It's a special edition of the IdahoSports.com Prepcast. We are live and coming at you on Facebook, on Twitter, and the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel. Welcome into our 2021 State Softball Tournament preview. Brandon Baney alongside Lorin Jensen. We're going to be breaking down the brackets. Lorin, thank you for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's good to be here.
Yeah, this is my favorite time of year. You know, this time of year, I'm not Brandon Baney. I'm Brackets Baney because I love just looking at the brackets, dissecting every matchup. It's going to be fantastic. Softball this year in the state of Idaho has been really exciting. There's been some really dominant pitchers, some timely hitting, and just the fact that we were able to get through an entire season after the previous one was wiped out because of COVID-19 is a big accomplishment.
Yeah, I was looking at, some stats over the last couple of days and looking at teams, and yeah, we've got some teams that have just been phenomenal. You lost a handful of games, scoring 12, 15 runs a game, and only giving up a handful of runs a game. So there's been some pretty impressive performances across all classifications.
Yeah, and there's some dominant teams that we're going to discuss. I guess without further ado, let's get right into it. But before we do, also, I want to give a shout out to all the people that are watching live, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube. If you want to participate, you want to give your favorite player or your favorite team a shout out, you want us to talk about a team a little more in depth, just leave a comment. We'll put it up on the screen. We'll give you the shout out, and then we'll talk about your favorite team or favorite athlete. So as we go throughout the night, hop in with the comments, give your favorite athlete or team a shout out, and we'll put it up on the screen. That's what it's all about, having fun here live and interactive with IdahoSports.com. All right, well, let's start at the top, the 5A State Softball Tournament. Here's a look at the official bracket. Right off the bat, Lorin, what stands out to you here with this?
Well, looking at Highland and Eagle, those two teams, pretty good records on both sides, obviously. Different conference matchups, but Highland comes in 21-5, 9-3 in conference, and then Eagle 19-8, 9-5. So Eagle, the D seed out of the 3rd district. So they had some really good teams in that district. Highland comes in as the A seed out of 5-6, and so it's hard to say. These teams, I didn't look at if they have common opponents, but one thing that I really saw was Highland and Eagle, they're both scoring right around 10 runs a game. But the big difference that I saw, Eagle's giving up 7 runs a game, whereas Highland only giving up about 4. So there's a little discrepancy there. So, maybe defense plays out a little bit, pitching.
Yes, and Highland has a great 1-2 combo in the pitcher circle. Sophomore Marissa Mauger, who's been fantastic all season long, and then senior Maddie Van Sickle has also been outstanding. Her older sister is Kenzie Van Sickle, the softball coach at Marsh Valley, which we're going to talk about in a little bit here at the 3A level. So Highland's kind of got the pitching. Eagle kind of has the offense, though. They've been able to score in bunches, but like you said, they're also giving up as many runs as they're scoring sometimes. So yeah, at this time of year, when it comes to state, I don't know about you, Lorin, but I always kind of lean more towards the team that's got the better pitching. Is that how you're feeling also?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially where, some of these teams, obviously they've played each other before, so they're familiar with the different pitchers that they're going to face. But if you go up against a team that you haven't faced their pitcher, I feel like automatically that pitcher has an advantage on you. It's, they talk about hitting being one of the hardest things to do in sports in general, hitting a baseball. Well, tell you what, there's some phenomenal athletes in the softball ranks. You talked about Sydney Groves for Eagle Mustangs, hitting 481 this year, 15 home runs and 50 RBIs. I don't know that I had 50 RBIs throughout, and I definitely didn't have 15 home runs throughout my whole high school career. So just some phenomenal hitters for both these squads.
Yes, and one more note from this matchup with Highland and Eagle. Highland's coach, Tisha Coverdell, has been with the program since it started. She's in her 25th season at Highland High. She is retiring at the end of the season, and so it's senior day just a couple weeks ago at Highland High School. They actually had a ceremony, unbeknownst to Coach Coverdell, where they actually named the field after her. So that, in terms of storybook endings, Coach Coverdell going out on top, a winner would be nice for Highland. They are on the tough side of the bracket though, because as we bring it up again, you've got Rocky Mountain waiting right below in the next matchup against Skyview. So it's an all District 3 matchup. Rocky Mountain, I would say, is probably the overwhelming favorite coming in simply because they're 24-1 this year.
Yeah, 24-1. and 12-1 in conference. It was it who was their lone loss? Was it Mountain View? I can't remember now, but they had one lone loss. Don't know what happened. But yeah, phenomenal season. To lose one game in a softball or a baseball season is just phenomenal. And yeah, definitely the overall favorite. And you look at their scoring differential. They're scoring almost 13 runs a game and only giving up, 4.5, 5 runs a game. So again, powerful offense, and maybe some good pitching can shut them down. There's some good pitchers on the other teams, but their defense has been pretty phenomenal and stout as well. So they're kind of the whole package right now. And a tough matchup right away for Skyview, who's obviously faced them already.
Yeah, so Rocky Mountain, their loss was to Timberline. They lost 6-1. Timberline also is on the bottom half of that bracket, very tough. And then that district championship was kind of wild with Mountain View. Mountain View came into that district tournament as the number 6 seed, and they got all the way to the championship against top-seeded Rocky Mountain. It was a wild back-and-forth game. Rocky ended up winning on a walk-off, 14-13. Liz Marshall came through with the game-winning base hit. Isabella Brinkman scored the game-winning run. So, Rocky Mountain, even when they're in tight games, seem to find ways to come through and win. And so, yes, as you mentioned, Skyview will have their hands full. They actually had to win the state play-in game to advance to state. They defeated Lake City from the north 18-8. We're already starting to get some comments in. How about our guy, Scott Burton? He's going to be joining us tomorrow on the baseball podcast preview. That'll be live at 4:00 tomorrow afternoon. Lorin, you're going to be there for that as well, right?
Yeah, that's the plan. Yes. Barring anything crazy. Yes.
Yeah. So Scotty giving us a shout out there in the comments. And again, if you got fans of teams or players and you want to give your favorite team a shout out, here's Tammy. Go Rocky. Yes. Rocky is going to be very tough to beat in this 5A softball tournament. Let's get back to the bracket. As we move now to the bottom half, you've got Post Falls against Mountain View. Those are two teams that kind of, like we said, got hot at the right time. Mountain View was the number 6 seed at districts, got all the way to the district championship game. Post Falls came into the 1A district, 1-2 district tournament as the number 3 seed. And they got to the championship against Lewiston and knocked off the regular season champ, Lewiston Bengals. Lewiston actually didn't even make it to state. And then the final matchup, Thunder Ridge against Timberline. And we talked about Timberline, the only team to knock off Rocky. So whereas the top half of the bracket, I think, is definitely Rocky Mountains, the bottom half is kind of wide open. It's kind of where all the wild cards are.
Yeah. You look at Post Falls and they had a good season. 15-5, 7-5 overall, 7-5 in conference, 15-5 overall. A good respectable season. 18-9 for Mountain View, 10-5 in conference. Thunder, 17-7. They were the number 1 seed going into the district tournament, and ended up getting beat by Highland and had to come back through and win. But 10-2 in conference. So, and then Timberline, 17-8, 11-4. A lot of evenly matched teams. Again, if you look at run differentials, it's 3, 4, maybe 5 runs versus what they score and what they give up. Nobody has a negative run differential on this bracket in the 5A. So everybody can put up some points and plays pretty good defense, put up runs. We'll see. I don't know. The bottom half, yeah, interesting to see what happens there.
Well, Tammy gave Rocky the shout out a few moments ago. She says, I think Post Falls could be a great contender. I have to agree. That's the hard thing this time of year. Those teams up north, you have no idea because they, Post Falls was able to come down and play, I think, in the big spring break tournament they always do. But typically those teams from the north are kind of wild cards. It's hard to figure out, but yeah, they have the potential as well for sure.
Yeah, and Thunder, I think Thunder Ridge, here in Eastern Idaho, they're another one that could be a big contender on that bottom half of the bracket, make a run. They've got some great players. They've got some big hitters on that team. And yeah, I think they could make a run as well.
Yeah, and then, we mentioned Thunder Ridge, Timberline at the bottom there. I do want to give one shout-out to Timberline. They have a junior pitcher, Amber Thornton, and she has been absolutely amazing in the pitcher circle this year. 15-1 with a 1.85 ERA. She's thrown, I lost count, she's thrown multiple no-hitters this season, maybe even a perfect game. Beyond that, though, the depth is a question. And so really this time of year in softball, almost everybody has one pitcher that's awesome. It's the teams that have 2 that are typically the ones that advance and do well, right?
Yeah, if you've got two dominant pitchers in softball, I mean, one can take you a long ways. Two, though, that really puts you over the top. And, that'll be a fun matchup. Brinley DeBell for Thunder Ridge, she had a doubleheader day where she went 8 for 10, so it'll be a fun matchup to see her up against that, Amber Thornton, who's 15-1, 1.85 ERA. Who's going to win out, the hitting or the pitching?
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic to watch. So yeah, that 5A tournament, I think is going to be pretty good, but Rocky Mountain probably the favorite going in, and we'll see what happens on that bottom half. All right, let's move on to the 4A bracket now. And this is another one where I think coming in, Bishop Kelly is probably the prohibitive favorite. They've been near the top of the coaches poll all season long. But first, in the top half of the bracket, you have Blackfoot against Twin Falls. That's two district champions there. And then Lakeland against Ridgeview. That top half of the bracket is loaded. You're talking about 3 district champions, and then Ridgeview, which was the runner-up in District 3. They lost to Bishop Kelly in a pretty tight game. That's a tough top of the bracket, Lorin.
Yeah, I mean, Blackfoot 20-6. They undefeated in conference play. Twin Falls 11-1 in conference play, 19-7 overall. Lakeland, don't let that 13-16 overall record trick you, because they were 7-1 in conference. They play in that 4A, 5A combined conference up there, up north. And so, they played some tough competition, and yeah, don't let that. And Ridgeview, we were talking about them early in the season, just the phenomenal season that they had going, and ended up losing to BK, but that's nothing to hang your head about. They'll be right in the mix as well.
Yeah, we were able to talk to Ridgeview coach Jody Hoagland on the Prepcast. It was back in March, but Ridgeview got off to such a great start. They started 13-2. They were the number 1 ranked team in the coaches poll, and since then it's been kind of up and down. They've gone 6-6 over their last 12 games, but like we said, they represented well, played Bishop Kelly fairly tough in that district championship loss. Ridgeview, it's kind of a team effort. They don't really have any outstanding stars. And so Coach Hoagland told me that the motto for the team is keep on chopping. Everybody's got to get up there and chop away at it. And hopefully the collective effort of our team will be successful. Blackfoot has some power hitters as well. Vic Agato has done really well this year, and they always just seem to be in the mix. I don't know what it is, but Blackfoot always seems to be playing well at the right time of the year, and I think they could be a real dark horse.
Yeah, and it's funny you say dark horse, but man, they're 20-6. They're a district champion, and so. But yeah, just kind of maybe that under the radar season a little bit, other than right here in Eastern Idaho in their own conference. But yeah, the talk is about BK. The talk was about Ridgeview and some of those District 3 teams. But yeah, there's some other phenomenal teams in this bracket that can really step up. Twin Falls, 19-7. They've put up good numbers. There's almost 11 runs a game and only given up almost 5. So that's a good differential for Twin Falls.
Yeah, Twin Falls has a great pitcher as well, Hannah Holcomb, who's thrown a couple of no-hitters this year as well. There's lots of pitchers that we're going to talk about that have thrown just a slew of no-hitters and even perfect games throughout the season. Yeah, Blackfoot, I'm trying to remember, and the reason why Lorin and I are doing the softball previews, because we are the ones that put together the softball coaches poll every week. I got to be honest, it was a few times, if any, that Blackfoot was actually ranked in the top 5 in that coaches poll. They were always in the receiving votes, but I don't ever, maybe a couple weeks, but like I said, 20-6, and I think pretty unheralded 20-6 for Blackfoot.
Well, yeah, they didn't end up in the final coaches poll. You had BK 1, Twin Falls 2, and Ridgeview 3, where the top 3 of the 4 and 5 that were in that final coaches poll aren't in the tournament. Middleton, I believe, was one of those, and I can't think of the other, but yeah. So, and that was kind of the way looking at the brackets overall in the final coaches poll. Some of the brackets got almost all teams. They had 4 of the 5 top teams in the tournament. But this one, there was only 3. So, just some crazy district tournament stuff happened.
Yes. Before we get to the bottom half of the bracket, some more fans chiming in here. Jed Torgerson, go Wes Jefferson Panthers, go Jordan Torgerson, number 44. Yeah, she is an awesome pitcher, and we're going to talk more about Wes Jefferson, and you want to talk about a loaded bracket, wait till we get to the 2A. That'll come up in just a little bit, Jed, and then we'll talk all about Jordan and the Wes Jefferson Panthers. Andrea says hi.
Hey. Hi.
You know her, Lorin?
Yeah, that's a good-looking lady right there.
That's for sure. So thanks for being with us here on IdahoSports.com. And remember, if you want to give a shout out to your favorite team or player, just do it in the comments and put it up on the screen and let everybody know what you're thinking. Okay, let's get back to the bottom half of that 4A bracket. This is where, I really think it's set up well for Bishop Kelly because they're playing Minico, a team that really comes in with a 9-17 record. They just got hot at districts and upset a bunch of teams, including Jerome in that second and third place game. And then you've got Century and Valley View. And again, Valley View took third behind Bishop Kelly in the district. And Century is a team that won their district, but you never know because it was a 3-team district and how their schedule played out. And so I think that bottom half of the bracket sets up really well for Bishop Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely. That opening round with Minico, never write anybody off. And Minico's hot right now. I mean, they've had a good run at the end of their tournament. Their record, obviously a losing record, and their point differential, their run differential is negative. And that makes sense where they lost more games than won. So, but if you're hot at the right time, we've seen other teams make great runs in tournaments, and they very well could, but they've got a tough task up front with BK right off the bat. And then Century Valley View, again, Valley View, the C team out there, Century won the out of the 4th district. They're the district champions, 15-5 up against 19-9. So yeah, it's BK kind of the same way in that the loaded top bracket in the 5As, a little bit loaded here. And then you got BK at the bottom with, I don't know, we'll see what kind of competition they face up against. BK, they just had a phenomenal season, 19-3.
Yes. Blackfoot getting a shout out here in the comments. Thanks for commenting. And yeah, we want it. Bring it on. We want more comments from the fans. I did want to note really quick with Bishop Kelly on their social media. I follow all of their, Twitter, Facebook, and they call themselves the Bomb Squad because they hit so many home runs. And after every game, they're uploading, hey, here's who represented the Bomb Squad tonight. And they'll take a picture with whoever hit home runs. And there's usually 2 or 3 girls standing there smiling after each game. So it's been fun to watch throughout the year. And then, Century, just like Highland, we talked about, Century's longtime coach, Bruce Gibbons, is retiring at the end of the year. This is the first time Century has been to state in a couple of years. And so, again, kind of that storybook ending. Can Century get there? They'll have a tough road, but it'll be interesting to watch that as well.
Yeah, it's fun. It'd be fun for these teams, with coaches retiring and some of those other scenarios to be able to go out on a high point. Making the tournament's great, but to make a run in the tournament, bring home some hardware, that would be icing on the cake for those coaches.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's pull up the 3A state bracket now. And this is where we start to get, I think this thing is wide open. I look at, probably 4 or 5 different teams that have a chance here. At the top of the bracket, you've got Timberlake up against Gooding, and then Filer against Weiser. Let's just break down that top half of the bracket. Timberlake, oh man, they really put the state on notice when they defeated Bonners Ferry in their district title game 37-2. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, unreal. and that's a shortened game. That's a 5-inning game, I would believe. And so I don't know, maybe not in the district tournament. Maybe they play all 7 anyways, but I think they still have the run rule in district tournament. So yeah, they put up 37 runs in 5 innings. That's, talk about bomb squad.
In that game alone, Ashley Grantham, 4 for 6, 2 home runs, including a grand slam, 9 RBIs, 4 runs scored. Lacey Peterson, 3 for 4, 6 RBIs, 4 runs scored. Emma Howard, 4 for 5 with a home run, 5 RBIs, 4 runs scored. That's a tough lineup. How do you navigate that?
Well, and talk about, padding your stats a little bit on that last game of the regular season. Their run differential, I don't know what it was prior to that game, but this one definitely helped. They were scoring on average 19.5 runs a game. Of course, that 37 bumps that average a little bit, but they were only giving up 3 throughout the season. So that's going to be tough. They're going to be a tough team and a tough out for anyone.
Well, yeah, and they're 21-3, and their reward for winning their district is a first-round matchup with Gooding, which is a top 5 team. Gooding went 22-5 in the regular season and actually got upset. They were the number 1 seed in the District 4 tournament, and Filer knocked them off not once but twice. And then Gooding had to win a play-in game against Snake River to even get to state, which is crazy that a team that had been ranked in the top 5 pretty much all season almost didn't make it. But now you've got this really fascinating first round matchup, Timberlake and Gooding, two top 5 teams right off the bat going at it. And that's the way the bracketing goes sometimes.
Well, yeah, and looking at the final coaches poll, Timberlake was 4th. That's a good rank, 4th in the state. Gooding was ranked 2nd in that final coaches poll. And of course, we'll get to the bottom, but Homedale comes in as that final coaches poll 1. But yeah, a 4 and a 2, a top 5 matchup, according to the last coaches poll right off the bat. That's going to be a tough game. We'll see how they match up.
Yeah. And then we mentioned
it's not going to be 37-2. It's not going to be 37-2. I'll make that prediction right now.
And how about this now? Let's talk about it from Gooding's perspective. If we pull up that bracket again, let's say you're Gooding and you knock off a very tough Timberlake team, you might have to play Filer in the semifinals. That's a team you just saw twice at districts, and they got your number twice. That's crazy to me that 2 teams from the same district are right there on the same side of the bracket.
Yeah, and that's just the nature of the brackets. At times you get matched up, and sometimes it's beneficial and sometimes it's not.
Yeah, so that'll be a good matchup too. Filer, as we said, the District 4 champions, and then Weiser was the number 3 seed at districts, and they knocked out the number 2 seed Payette 11-7 to earn their spot at state. Weiser at 15-14 overall, kind of one of those Cinderella teams that gets hot at the right time. We've got more comments coming here in the chat. Let's go South Fremont Cougars. Well, that's a good way to transition into the bottom half of the bracket, because that's where that's the 4A. Hold on. Okay. That's where we see South Fremont. And so, if you're a Cougars fan, you got to be feeling pretty good taking on a Bonners Ferry team that got, waxed by Timberlake in the district championship. And then they had to turn around on Saturday and beat Kellogg in their district tournament just to get in. But if you're South Fremont, you have to like that first round matchup.
Yeah. And you look at overall records there, 9-13 for South Fremont, 9-12 for Bonners Ferry. Bonners Ferry obviously played some more conference games, 6-6 and 3-1 for South Fremont, that 3-team conference. But yeah, I would look to see if that's going to be a pretty close game. Looking at South Fremont, they had to beat Sugar Salem twice. But here's interesting. You sent me some information, Brandon. South Fremont, they're 0-5 against the other teams at state. They've lost to Filer, Marsh Valley twice, and Gooding twice. So that doesn't bode well, but you get past that first game and things change. The tournament's a whole different animal. So that'll be a good matchup between South Fremont and Bonners Ferry. Yeah,
and in South Fremont, you mentioned they beat Sugar Salem twice, and both games were really tight, 14-13 and 15-14. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. And then maybe the most intriguing first round matchup is at the very bottom with Marsh Valley and Homedale. You mentioned Homedale has pretty much been the number 1 team most of the season in the coaches poll. They're 20-5-1, one of those ties in there. Marsh Valley is 14-6. They won District 5. They've got a great pitcher in Libby Larson. Homedale has a great player in Olivia Asamendi. And so I think this is going to be a fantastic matchup as well. We know Marsh Valley's baseball team is really good. How will the softball team perform?
Well, they did pretty good. I mean, they won their district and they're there, but they're coming up against, the number 1 ranked team, arguably in the state, and Homedale. Again, run differential. Marsh Valley, they're scoring 10 and giving up almost 6. And Homedale, they're scoring 12 and giving up right at 6. So if Marsh Valley, if the pitching can hold Homedale's bats down and keep them cold, keep them off the bases, Marsh Valley have a good shot at Homedale, and that'll be a good test. If they can get by them, they might have a good shot at getting to that state tournament championship game.
Yeah, it's going to be a good matchup for sure. Let's transition now to the 2A bracket, and this is where things are just like not even fair. If you look at this top half of the bracket, you have St. Mary's 21-2, Milad 21-0, Wes Jefferson 20-2. Just the top 3 teams on the bracket line. That's a combined 62-4. And then you have Nampa Christian, which is no slouch either, 16-6-1, but they were in a very tough district, District 3. That is a gauntlet. And that just like it seemed like the 2A state basketball bracket this year was top heavy on the top line of the bracket. Same thing here in softball.
Yeah, it's just tough matchups, to open up that bracket. And what do you do? Short of seeding the bracket, this is what happens. And yeah, none of those top 3 teams in the bracket lost a conference game. They were all, perfect through conference. 12-0 for St. Mary's, 6-0 for Milad, 8-0 for Wes J. And in the coaches poll, Milad was 1 in the final coaches poll. Milad was 1, Wes J was 2, and St. Mary's came in at 5. And half of that is because St. Mary's, again, they're that north-ish team that, maybe you don't know as much about, but hey, they were 21-2. They're pretty good.
Yeah, a lot of years, St. Mary's Milad might be the matchup for the championship, and here it is in the first round. Obviously, the discussion has to start with Milad. The last time we had a state tournament in 2019, they won it. They are on what are they on now? A 36-game winning streak heading into state, which, is awesome. The big winning streaks are awesome, but also it creates pressure with each game as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure the coaching staff there has done a great job of just kind of minimizing that. I'm sure the girls know about it. They understand. A lot of them have been multiple years, players on that team and have been a big part of that winning streak. But yeah, the focus now is, hey, it doesn't matter. None of those games matter. We have to win this one, and then we got to turn around and win again and win again. And hopefully, 1, 2, 3, 4. If they go 4 more and extend that to 40-game winning streak, they'll be back-to-back state champions.
Yeah, and our Madison Guernsey did a great feature article about the Milad softball program. It's on the homepage at IdahoSports.com if you want to read it. Their star is Riley Dorius. She's a senior. She's a threat in the pitcher circle. She's 21-0 with a .84 ERA. And then at the plate, she's batting .636 with 7 home runs and 34 RBIs, a true dual threat. We're getting some more comments here. Daniel Kendall says Highland Rams will be tough. They have a lot of talent. Go Rams. Absolutely. We talked about the 5A bracket at the very start. And so if you didn't catch that live, you can go back and watch it on the replay. And then also we've got KOFE 1240 AM in St. Mary's. Let's go St. Mary's Lumberjacks. Yes, I think St. Mary's has a good chance. Very tough first round matchup. St. Mary's has a star just like Riley Dorius from Milad, Tacey Watkins, who has been just phenomenal this year. She's only a sophomore. She's 13-2 with a 1.52 ERA this year. And she's thrown like 3 or 4. I lost count. Again, she's thrown multiple no-hitters throughout the season, maybe even a perfect game at some point. And then she's also batting .579 with 30 RBIs and 30 runs scored, which is just crazy.
Yeah, when you can account for 60 runs on the season, that's you're doing your job at the plate. That's a phenomenal season for her. And like you said, just a sophomore, Tacey Watkins. And I go back to Milad for Dorius. She's 21-0 this season. They only played 21 games, so she must have thrown and started or won every game as a starting pitcher. That's phenomenal. That's just unreal.
And that's what we talked about in 2A. There's a lot of star pitchers, but it's the teams that if you can find that second arm that can really deliver, that's where you are going to have success. The third team on the top half of the bracket, Wes Jefferson, we mentioned they're 20-2. Jordan Torgerson got a shout out a little earlier on the live stream. She is another phenomenal pitcher, 8-2 with the .95 ERA this year. And, she's thrown a couple of no-hitters as well. And, Nampa Christian is going to have their hands full. Nampa Christian upset top-seeded Melba 10-9 to steal the last spot at state there. And so, Wes Jefferson looks good in the first round.
Yeah, and I think out of those top 4 teams, West J got the good draw. We'll see how they match up. Nampa Christian in a tough district and hot coming in as they upset, like I said, the top-seeded Melba. So, yeah, they're going to need Jordan Torgerson to throw her best stuff. But with the .95 ERA, yeah, she's been doing that all season. She should come in, and I'm sure that they'll just lean on her and look for some offense from the rest of the gals on that team.
Yeah, so the top half of the bracket is loaded. The bottom half, I don't know. You could throw a dart and probably land. All 4 teams, I think, are pretty even. You've got New Plymouth, which won District 3. They were the number 2 seeded districts and won. Bear Lake, which is the runner-up to Milad. Maybe a lot of times Bear Lake would have won their district. It's just that they're in the same conference as Milad. And then, Declo and Firth, that final first-round matchup, that's kind of a coin flip as well. What do you see on the bottom half?
Well, the bottom half, Bear Lake 21-6, so they've got a really good record. But New Plymouth 18-8, not much of a difference there. Both a couple losses in conference. Point differential, I like looking at run differential. New Plymouth 13 runs a game, giving up 6.5. And then Bear Lake, they are, they're putting up 12 and giving up 5. So that's a toss-up. That could be a phenomenal game. It's going to be a tough one. Declo and Firth, and they're very well evenly matched. Not scoring as many points or runs a game, but giving up about the same amount. And, about 500 for both of them on the season overall, 8-7 for Declo, 12-11 for Firth. So again, a toss-up in that game. Like I said, toss a dart and pick your two teams and then see who matches up in the next game.
Yeah, Declo played by far the fewest amount of games, only 8-7. So they got in 15 games where a lot of the teams got in, 23, 24 games there. So, all right, let's move on to 1A, the final classification. The bracket looks a little different because there's only 2 districts. And so 6 teams get to go, the top 30 finishers from each district. So in the first round, you've got Glens Ferry and Genesee. And then at the bottom, Prairie against Rimrock. And then the 2 district champs, Potlatch and Notice, await the winners. So when you look at this 1A field, what do you see, Lorin?
Well, you're right. And I wasn't familiar with this bracket just based on that. And it's a little funky, but nice. The 2 district champions get the bye, which makes total sense there. Glens Ferry, Genesee, looking at those 2 teams again, Glens Ferry 14-6, 11-1 in their conference. I got to think Notice Notice was right there though too. That was a tough district championship game, I've got to assume. Genesee 10-11, so they're 500 on the season, just under 500 on the season. I think it's maybe a tall task for Genesee. Their point different or run differentials right there even, whereas Glens Ferry, they're about a 5 or 6 run difference. They're putting up more runs. So I think if I had to guess, I'm going to pick Glens Ferry there just based on their offensive output.
Yeah, Notice defeated Glens Ferry 5-3 in that district championship game. So it was pretty close throughout.
Right,
and Glens Ferry has a player, Aubry Gibbons, who we've talked about a lot this year. She's been great at the plate. She's been great in the pitcher's circle. In an earlier district game against Greenleaf Friends Academy, she went 5 for 5 with 2 doubles, 2 triples, and 7 RBIs. I mean, especially at the 1A level, if you've got a difference maker like that, it can be huge. Well,
and Genesee, I make my pick for Glens Ferry, and I start looking at some of the things that Genesee's done. They had to win a game over Cul-de-sac. It was 21-8, and then they had Kylie Carter go 5 for 5 with a double and a triple in that game, and then they knock off the 2 seed Kendrick 15-10 to get that final spot at state. And so they're on a run themselves. They're a hot team coming into the tournament. And so if you're Glens Ferry, don't overlook them.
Yeah. And then on the bottom half of the bracket, you've got Prairie up against Rimrock. And these are 2 teams that got knocked off early in districts and had to fight their way back. Prairie came in as the number 3 seed, and then they knocked off Kendrick in the semifinal. So Kendrick is the defending 1A champs. They won it in 2019. Well, they're not back this year. So somebody is going to be the new champion in 2021. So Prairie comes in, and they've got, a lot of the athletes you saw on the basketball court, especially Madison Shears, who played in the All-State All-Star basketball game. She's playing for the softball team. They've got a great coach in Jeff Martin. And so Prairie, I think, record-wise is pretty even with Rimrock, 15-5 for Prairie, 15-6 for Rimrock. But I think the Pirates are a really good, sneaky team. Rimrock had to win the 3rd place game over Greenleaf Friends Academy, and they only won that by a run to get to state. So that's going to be an interesting matchup as well.
Yeah, it looks like evenly matched teams going up against each other. So it's kind of a toss-up again, and that's what you want. You want good games at these tournaments, exciting games, and the winners move on. The losers, head to that backside of the bracket to try to pick up some hardware there as well.
And then we talked about the 2 district champs. We'll get the bye. They'll play the winners of those 2 opening round games. Notice was the District 3 champion. They were the number 2 seeded districts and defeated Glens Ferry 5-3 in that district championship game. They've been leaning on a young sophomore, Lexi Cutterback, who's been pretty good this year. But really, they're kind of an unknown. They didn't play a ton of games. They're 13-2, so only 15 games. It's hard to tell with that small of a sample size, what Notice is going to do, but they're 1 step closer than 4 of the 6 teams that are there. So,
well, yeah. And just because they're the two district championships, compare them there to Potlatch on the top half of the bracket. Potlatch 17-1, so not much difference in their overall schedules. 12-0 in conference, which it looks awesome, but really, they only played 18 games, so three more games than Potlatch did, and that's kind of the story. 20 games was the most for Prairie out of Prairie and Glens Ferry. I guess Genesee played 21, so not a huge discrepancy in the number of games played, but those two district champions, they need to show why they're district champions. They'll take on the winner of that first game, and then we'll know how they match up with everyone else. Prairie's, if I'm Notice, I got to be worried about if Prairie wins. Prairie, they consistently have good teams come out of there, whether it's basketball, softball, whatever it is. So you got to be ready for them if they win and come out.
Absolutely. Shout out to Glens Ferry, Jessica Gibbons. Aubry Gibbons is the shortstop, not a pitcher. Typo. Proud of my girl. Well, we're proud of her too, because it's been fun to watch her throughout the season, and she has been really good offensive bat in that Glens Ferry lineup. And then you mentioned Potlatch, the final team that we're going to talk about here. They have been pretty much the number one team all season long in the coaches poll. They didn't really start playing until like the middle of April. They had a lot of games get canceled because of weather and teams having to kind of forfeit their seasons up north and things like that. And so for a long time, they were like 0-0, but they were still the top ranked team. And that just shows the level of respect that all the other coaches had for Potlatch. The fact that they hadn't even played a game and they were still the number one ranked team.
Yeah, and there's a good reason for that. You look at their run differential, they're scoring over 15 runs a game and only giving up 4. So that's a good differential. They're going to be a tough team to beat. Potlatch, the final coaches poll, they were 1. Prairie was 2. Glens Ferry 3, and then Genesee was 5. Rimrock and Notice weren't ranked in the final coaches polls, but yeah, all these teams, that's going to be a tough tournament, and definitely the best team. Whoever wins that can say, "Hey, we're the best team," because they have a lot of good teams to go through.
Yeah, for sure. Potlatch, I was able to talk to their coach, Dean Butterfield, for the Prepcast a few weeks back, and his daughter, Rebecca Butterfield, is their pitcher. He said she throws 8 different pitches. I said, how is that even possible? And he said, well, it just all kind of depends on what she's feeling and what she, looks at the batter and what she can get away with. But 8 different pitches for Rebecca Butterfield. She's been outstanding across both games. In the semifinals, they beat Genesee 14-4, and then they beat Prairie in the district championship 11-1. Across both of those games, she allowed only 4 hits and had 19 strikeouts. And so we talked about with some of these other pitchers, especially at the 2A level, she's kind of been the pitcher for Potlatch this year, but she's been a good one.
Yeah, 8 different pitches. I'd like to see those written out, what they are, because, man, not many people, softball, baseball, they can't throw 8 different pitches, but yeah, 8 different pitches, that's crazy. That really keeps hitters on their toes or back on their heels, guessing at what's coming next. You have no idea. Yeah.
And I asked him in the interview too, and I can't remember what he said, but just go back and
they're top secret.
Yeah, he mentioned them. There's 8 of them. I couldn't just keep I couldn't keep track of them all. But if you want to listen to that interview, I recommend you subscribe and download the IdahoSports.com Prepcast. We churn it out every week. We're interviewing coaches and people all over the state. And this was a couple weeks ago that we interviewed Potlatch's coach, Dean Butterfield. So check that out. And then, Potlatch has never won softball in its school history. They're really excited and think they have a good chance this year. And a lot of these girls have been playing together since the 3rd grade. And so it would be kind of again, talking about storylines and things like that would be kind of cool. But that's the softball tournament in a nutshell. 5A down to 1A. We want to thank all the fans that jumped on tonight on Facebook and Twitter and our YouTube channel. And thanks for commenting. If you weren't able to be here live, it's not going anywhere. It'll be archived. It'll be on our Twitter page and our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. So go back and watch it, whenever you have time between now and Thursday when state softball starts. Lorin, it's been an exciting regular season, and I'm super excited for what's going to happen at state.
Yeah, it's been fun to kind of watch the coaches polls and watch I didn't get to see really any softball games this year, but watching records and the different teams. Yeah, across the state, we've got some phenomenal athletes from 5A down to 1A, great standouts on all of these teams. And it's if you're at those tournaments, I'm jealous, because it's going to be a great time to sit, enjoy the weather, watch America's, if you want to say baseball is America's pastime, well, softball's right there with it. It's just a great time to sit at the diamond and watch a great game.
Yes. And softball's a great team sport as well. You get the chants and the cheers from the dugouts and the stomps and the claps. And it's a good time for sure.
Everything's closer. It's just, I love fast pitch. I umpired for a while, fast pitch, and I just loved doing fast pitch because you're right there in the mix of everything as an umpire. You're right there. And like you said, the benches are into it. And there's cheers and chants and the girls are fired up and smiling and happy. And it's a great time. If you can get to the tournament, get there.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we've got one more preview still to come tomorrow at 4:00 right here on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. It's going to be our state baseball preview. Lorin's going to be there. I'm going to be there. We're going to have all of our play-by-play broadcasters as IdahoSports.com. Once again, we'll be broadcasting every single game, every single pitch from the 2021 Idaho State Baseball Championships. It's going to be a lot of fun breaking down the baseball brackets tomorrow evening with all the play-by-play guys, Lorin.
Yeah, looking forward to tomorrow. We'll get it. I won't have to talk near as much, so that's a bonus. They won't have to listen to me near as much, so we'll have Scott Burton on there. Yeah, it's going to be a good time. A lot of great just broadcasters that'll be with us taking on those. Gary Jones, if I'm not mistaken, longtime broadcaster, one of my old chemistry teachers. So looking forward to that too.
Cool. It's going to be a good time. One more shout out before we go here from Tony. Get it done. Homedale Lady Trojans. Yeah, they've got a great shot. They really do, especially with their setup in the bottom half of the bracket. But thanks for everybody who gave shout outs to fans and teams throughout the live stream tonight. And if you're baseball fans of these schools, a lot of these schools doubled up. A lot of these schools have softball and baseball teams competing. So come on back tomorrow at 4 p.m. right here with IdahoSports.com. Lorin, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on, Brandon. It was fun. We'll see you tomorrow.
Sounds great. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good night from IdahoSports.com.